Good afternoon, and thank you for joining us today. I'm Taylor Combaluzier, a mining analyst at Red Cloud Securities. Today's webinar features Midnight Sun Mining, which is exploring for copper cobalt deposits in the Domes region of the prolific Zambia-Congo Copperbelt. The belt is known to be the second largest copper producing region in the world. The company's flagship Solwezi Project is a pre-resource stage asset spanning over 50,000 hectares in Zambia. There are multiple world-class active copper mines and mining companies in proximity of Solwezi. The property hosts numerous copper oxide and sulfide targets and offers near-term production potential, which Midnight Sun is exploring through a cooperative exploration agreement with First Quantum Minerals. Today, I have with me on the webinar Adrian O'Brien, who's Vice President of Business Development and Communications at Midnight Sun Mining. The format of today's webinar will be comprised of two parts. In the first part, Adrian will provide an update on Midnight Sun and what you have to look forward to in 2025. In the second part, we'll take your questions live in a Q&A session, so please use the chat to send in your questions at any point throughout the presentation. To start, I'll handle the disclosures, then I'll turn it over to Adrian. So for Midnight Sun, there may be some forward-looking statements made on this call. I would direct listeners to the cautionary note on page 2 of the Midnight Sun corporate presentation located on the company's website. For Red Cloud Securities, Inc., I would highlight that this webinar is for information purposes only and should not be considered a solicitation to purchase or sell securities, or a recommendation to buy or sell securities. We note that this call does not take into account the particular situation or needs of individual investors. Participants should rely on their own investigations and seek their own professional advice before investment. Please see our most recent research located on our website for Midnight Sun specific disclosures. So with that out of the way, I'll turn it over to Adrian to introduce you and update you on Midnight Sun and what you have to look forward to.
Excellent. Thanks, Taylor. Absolute pleasure to be here as always. We always look forward to these events. Such a great opportunity to show everybody what we've been doing, bring everybody up to speed on what the projects are that we're working on, of course, and where we've gone in the last few months since the last time we did this. A lot's going on. You know, to be perfectly blunt, we have been in overdrive. We've been working super hard behind the scenes. Our team has been in the field attacking all three projects. And I'm going to go through all of that with you today. But I want to approach this a little bit differently simply because there may be new people on the call today. There may be people that have never seen the story before. So I want to make sure we touch at least a few key points that cover off parts of the story that people may or may not know. And just to really set the stage and give everyone a sense of what it is that we're doing and where it is that we're working before we dive into that exploration stuff. So let's go forward here. I'm going to walk you through a couple of key slides, a couple of key components, and we can cover this off pretty easily. I always like to start with this simply because this graphic tells the story. If you are familiar with Zambia whatsoever, you'll have probably heard of the Zambia-Congo Copperbelt. And this is a prolific jurisdiction, but bar none, what you're looking at right here is a perfect graphic of the Zambia-Congo Copperbelt and what they call the Domes region, as Taylor mentioned a moment ago in the introduction. This is the top spot on the planet today for copper exploration. That's evidenced by the groups that are working here. And certainly you can see First Quantum, Barrick, Ivanhoe, China Molybdenum, obviously the big players in the region. You can see 5 of the top copper mines in Africa in front of you and completely surrounding Midnight Sun's property. Midnight Sun, of course, is surrounded in green, right in the center of that series of bubbles in the Domes region here. And this is the heart. This is the heart of the Zambia-Congo Copperbelt. This is the Domes region. And there's a couple of key themes as to why everybody's there. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about the companies that aren't shown on this screen, but that are in the region, because it's such a key part of the story now going forward. So you see, of course, First Quantum Sentinel Mine, Barrick's Lumwana Mine, Ivanhoe's Kamoa-Kakula, China Molybdenum's Tenke deposit, and of course, Kansanshi, First Quantum's flagship. Every asset you see before you, with exception of Tenke, is 1 billion tons. Those are some of the biggest deposits in the world. And what makes the Domes so interesting is that this is a jurisdiction where billion-ton deposits are born and bred as an average. That does not happen every day. In most jurisdictions, a billion-ton deposit is the outlier. Here, it's a standard thing. So First Quantum Sentinel Mine, 1 billion tons at 0.51. Lumwana, Barrick's flagship, This is a key thing that we're going to touch on today. I want to talk about the themes and, of course, what we're doing here and how it relates to Lumwana, because it really does. That is a backbone of our story. But what you're looking at is an asset that in the last 24 to 48 months has gone from 900 million tons at 0.5 to 1.62 billion tons at 0.52. That is an absolutely enormous asset. It is tier one, it is world-class. And that transition happened in just a 24-month period. Very, very quick transition for Barrick to move that asset forward in the last little while, led, of course, by a fellow named Kevin Bonnell, and that is Midnight Sun's COO. I'll tell you that story in just a moment. But of course, Barrick has now unleashed these numbers on the world. They're massive. This asset is world-class. And then we have Kamoa-Kakula inside the DRC, Ivanhoe's flagship, 1.4 billion tons at almost 3% copper. There's not too many deposits in the world that compare to that. Absolutely incredible. And China Molybdenum's Tenke deposit, which may be a little bit smaller tonnage-wise, but average grade of over 2%. This is something that you do see in the belt. You do see these deposits that maybe are slightly smaller. In the case of Kamoa, certainly not. But the contained copper in a deposit like that is still comparable to something like Sentinel or Kansanshi at 1 billion tons of 0.66. So the footprint can be smaller, but if you get that kind of grade, becomes a world-class asset in a hurry. Then, of course, First Quantum's Kansanshi mine, 6 kilometers away from Midnight Sun's property. This is the flagship of First Quantum's fleet, so to speak. This asset is a sulfide deposit, as all of these are predominantly, but of course they have an oxide component. And there's a whole key aspect of that works with Midnight Sun, because we have a cooperative exploration plan in place to develop oxide copper that can be fed to First Quantum's SXEW circuit located at Kansanshi, just 6 kilometers away, and on a haul road that runs through our mine or through our property to their mine. So really, really key part of the story. Let's drill down a little bit further here. I'll give you a little bit more insight as to what we're talking about, just to quickly show you, of course, the way that the Zambian side of the belt is laid out. This is the haul road I was simply referring to a moment ago, cutting right through our property. And then you have Lumwana and Sentinel. And I want to point out a couple of key things on this graphic. The first one is those yellow outlined basement domes. These are the namesake, of course, of the domes region. These are ancient rocks. These are the oldest rocks in the belt. And there are only 3 known systems within the domes that are actually situated in the basement themselves. Typically what you see, similar to Lumwana there, you'll notice that there is a brown ring around these basement domes. We see it over here at Kambampo, we see it at Kaziba, and of course Solwezi, and we see it at Mombeji next door where Lumwana is located. That's called the lower Rhone. That is the unit of rocks, the unit of geology that hosts probably somewhere between 75 and 85% of the copper in the belt. In the case of Lumwana and Kamoa-Kakula, they're changing that. These are outliers. They are very unique in that their mineralization is largely, if not predominantly, located. In the case of Lumwana, it is entirely located in the basement dome. So this is a new thing for the belt. This is a new thing for the Zambia-Congo Copperbelt. And of course, the third project that fits under that umbrella is Dumbwa. That is our flagship asset. It is basement hosted. And I guess when you're looking at the comparables, what you want to focus on is the fact that Lumwana and Kamoa-Kakula are both well over 1.5 billion tons. They are the 2 largest in the entire belt. And of course, Dumbwa is a 20-kilometer long geochem anomaly that we're going to be working on. Really fantastic. And it has an analog to Lumwana. But if you can go on the comparison basis, we have a real opportunity here for a very, very big target. So let's move forward a little bit. These are the themes I want to leave you with. I want to make sure everybody understands this. Billion tons are an average in this belt. You see these consistently. These deposits are sediment hosted. They are not porphyry. That means they're shallow, less than 150 meters depth, and average grade about 0.56% in Zambia. So when you're looking at the grades that we're talking about across Midnight Sun's property, the discoveries we've made, the work we're doing, keep that 0.56 grade average in mind. That really shows you what we're working on and just how impressive it is to date. So 3 big targets we're working on. I'm going to cover all 3 today. We have kicked off a program that is aggressive, that covers all three of our targets. It's underway now. I'm going to give you all a bit of an update on where we're at. And this is pivotal for us. We are taking these from early stage discovery now. We're pushing them forward to a transformative period in their development. This is where we can start to apply some real size and scale and valuation to these assets, moving them into more of a significant discovery phase, drilling, IP. We're using partial ionic leach surveys. And then I want to show you what our exploration tactic is, because we have a really formulaic approach driven by Kevin's work at Lumwana. So before we dive too deep into Dumbwa, I want to show everybody something really quickly. And I'm going to jump ahead a couple of slides, and then I'm going to come back to this if we can. I might have to go quite a ways ahead here. But I want to talk about our exploration strategy. Our exploration strategy has a very simplistic approach. This is cost effective. This is methodical. I like to say it's measured, precise, cost effective, and methodical for simple reason that this is as simplistic as it gets. This is driven by Kevin's success at Lumwana, and it's very straightforward. We start in the Domes region. First of all, if you're looking for a big copper deposit, you want to find a geochem anomaly to start with. And the hope would be that you have a copper clearing or some kind of biological anomaly at surface that gives you confirmation that that big sulfide system exists. So we start with looking for, obviously, those copper clearings, which we have across our property, but particularly at Dumbwa, we have a 20 by 2 kilometer copper anomaly or copper clearing. First phase, geochem. Test this thing at surface in soil. Does it hang together? Is there copper there? Is it showing up? That's your initial target. Next step, dipole IP. Very critical that you're not doing traditional IP, you're doing dipole, because we're trying to isolate the structure that we're about to drill. We don't want to go into this and go in with a scattershot approach. We don't want to waste money. We don't want to waste time. We don't want to waste drill holes. So we're going in and we're running that survey, which has a very low cost, but it gives us a picture of not only the depth of the mineralization, it shows us the dip direction, which is critical. These deposits are typically 10 to 15 meters thick and up to maybe 20. They can sit at an angle. They could be dipping, let's say 15 or 20 degrees to the east or to the west. And if you have something that's 15 meters thick, dipping to the east, and you were to drill that from the west and your angle is wrong, it is incredibly easy to miss it. So we want to make sure that we have all that information first, and we're not drilling blind. We're drilling something that we already understand. We're drilling targets and structures that we know the depth, we know the thickness, we know where we're going and what we're trying to accomplish. And in that sense, once we start drilling, we're drilling effectively and we're drilling off the structure as opposed to just going in and blindly trying to make a discovery. So with all of that in mind, I'm going to go back to the beginning here and let's talk about these targets really quick, and I'll show you what we're doing on each of them. I'm not going to spend a ton of time talking about the targets. I think everybody on this call today probably understands most of what we're working on, but I do want to talk about the Lumwana analog because it is absolutely critical. So the first target we're working on, of course, is Dumbwa. Dumbwa is an extraordinary target, 20 kilometer long soil anomaly at 0.73 with a copper clearing, which is an area that has so much copper in the soil that it becomes toxic to vegetation and nothing can grow. We have that at Dumbwa. It runs for 20 kilometers by 2 kilometers. And we have a host of drill intercepts that are significant, that are economic, that are very impressive in sulfides. So we know a sulfide system exists at Dumbwa. Now, what I want to talk about is the analog. Now, we had a fellow join us less than a year ago. His name's Kevin Bonnell. Kevin Bonnell was brought in by Barrick to Lumwana. Of course, anybody on the calls probably heard me talk about this before, but Barrick acquired Lumwana nearly 20 years ago for over $7 billion, $7.5 billion, or $7.3 billion. Tremendous acquisition price. They then spent 15 or 20 years trying to figure it out. They couldn't do it. So 4 years ago, they brought in this fellow, Kevin Bonnell. Kevin Bonnell put a team together. Kevin is a PhD geologist, absolutely specialized in sub-Saharan Africa and these sulfide systems or strata-bound copper systems. Kevin came in. His approach was very simple. Exactly what I just described to you. Look for the copper clearing, look for a geochem anomaly, track the geochem anomaly with dipole IP, and drill the structure. They came up with a 5-kilometer long anomaly at Lumwana. It ended up being 2 satellite deposits. Those satellite deposits have given Barrick 1.62 billion tons of ore, 62 years of mine life, and an increase in contained copper of almost 6 billion pounds. I mean, it's absolutely unbelievable. So that was defined with a simplistic approach, but here's where it matters to Midnight Sun. As I mentioned, there's only a few deposits that are basement dome hosted: Lumwana, Kamoa-Kakula, and the system that we're going to go and explore and work on and drill, Dumbwa. That's on our property. It's our flagship asset. And I'm not going to go through every single point other than to say, if you look at this, you can see every single facet of this matches up. Lumwana and Dumbwa have very, very similar, if not identical, mineralized footprints, same geology, same depth, same dip, same direction of mineralization. These things are identical. What we don't know at Dumbwa yet is the shape, size, structure, extent of the system. Now we're going to find out. So we've run this, we've got geochem that runs top to bottom on Dumbwa. It's over 20 kilometers long, gives us a grade of 0.73 peak grade. And now we're in that phase 2, which is dipole IP. We're about halfway through now. We're attacking that, and we're going to see if we're right and Dumbwa is a direct analog to Lumwana. If we're right, our feel is that this is bigger and higher grade. That is certainly where Kevin's coming from. Just to give you some comparison, if they had 5 kilometers of strike at Lumwana, we have 20 kilometers of strike at Dumbwa. In terms of grade, it was significantly lower at Lumwana at surface, ended up being this enormous deposit that's basically going to double their size and double their output, which is incredible. So that's our approach. Kevin's the guy running the program, which is absolutely fantastic. And now, of course, we're working on these targets. I'm going to cover these off, but I really want to dive into the exploration side so I don't beleaguer this too far. But there's 2 key things about Kaziba. Of course, this is the northwest corner of our property where we have been working on our first quantum cooperative exploration plan. That is, of course, on oxides. And just under this corner up here where it says Kaziba drilled high-grade oxide occurrence, that is the mineralized blanket that we're currently working on. But in our last program, fall of 2024, we ran partial ionic leach sampling over this entire area, and we came up with something based on some early geochem and some early magnetics that absolutely blew us away, and that is called Kaziba Target 2. This is a sulfide target, and what I really want everyone to understand is the critical aspect of this target for a couple of different reasons. Number one, you can see this sort of basic outline here, just underneath around the edges of these oxide blankets, but just underneath this bubble here and where this area is. If you look around that, you can see the basement dome at Kaziba. Now, at the very beginning, I mentioned that the deposits, 75 to 80% of the copper in this belt sits in what they call the lower Rhone. Kaziba Target 2 is firmly positioned in the lower Rhone. It is in the right geology. It sits right on the outside of the basement dome. And what we started with here was a 4 kilometer by 2 kilometer mag target. We had geochem over that confirmed the same thing, but with a very subtle signature. Partial ionic leach gave us an absolutely identical target. 4 kilometers by 2 kilometers in the lower Rhone. So we know there's lots of copper there. We know it's in the right geology. And we have 3 different types of surveys telling us that there's a big copper target there. The next thing to do was phase 2 of our exploration plan, which is not partial ionic leach, dipole IP. This is the dipole IP. Again, now you can really see there's the basement dome. There's your high chargeability. If it were a sulfide unit, it would have low resistivity, just like that. So we know that we have a sulfide unit at Kaziba Target 2. We are going to drill this. We're also going to run IP over the entire extent of this target. But to start with, we've got a beautiful target. Every single layer matches and tells us that there is a sulfide deposit at Kaziba Target 2, and we believe it's full of copper based on the geochem. We won't know until we drill it. Now we're doing that, and we're going to find out. This will be diamond drilling to test the structure. I'll show you the exact exploration plan as we go. And then, of course, Me Too. Very, very interesting from a sulfide perspective. This target down here on the left-hand side, the uppermost of those two targets that I'm showing you right now, is on the west flank of the Solwezi Dome. And of course, you're looking at the outline of the Solwezi Dome, which is that dark blue area on the right-hand side of the screen. That sulfide target has already been drilled. That gave us 11.5 meters of 3.44% in sulfides and 11.5 meters of 1.4% in sulfides. We've never put grades in tons to this. We're about to do that. So we're in phase 1 right now, which is going to be partial ionic leach over the entire west side of that dome. So you understand now why we're exploring the way we are. Let's go into the actual exploration programs as they sit today. So we launched this a couple of weeks ago. This is Dumbwa. Now you're looking at the 20-kilometer long geochem anomaly. Obviously, that southernmost kind of 10 or 12 kilometers, very concentrated, very impressive looking. And those little black lines you see are the dipole-dipole IP survey, which is underway now. Those dipole-dipole IP surveys, those lines are going to cover the entire Dumbwa target. We're underway. We're probably about halfway through as I'm speaking, and we're pushing forward on this very, very quickly. Once we get those results, we're estimating somewhere in the middle of May for the results to come in. Once we get those results, we're going to interpret them, and we're going to dictate how we drill this system based on those IP results. We fully expect that there will be areas of higher grade mineralization and areas of lower grade mineralization. We expect Dumbwa to pinch, to swell. We know it comes to surface in certain areas. We know where those higher grade intercepts are. And we know that there's going to be areas where it's tilting different directions, at least slightly. So we're going to let the IP survey dictate where we drill and how. And we're going to outlay a very significant drill program. Budget's probably going to be in the 3 to 3.5 million range. And that's what we're kicking off next. So this is going to be put in place around the middle of May, middle to end of May. We'll launch the drilling right away. So there's not going to be any kind of lag, and we can push forward on this and start drilling and really start attacking Dumbwa to prove size and scale. But that IP survey is going to tell the story. We're going to have a clear picture of the dip, the mineralization, the depth, and we're going to be able to go and attack this with a significant attack plan and really start to build out systemic scale across Dumbwa, which is super exciting. We've been waiting a decade for this. Kaziba Target 2, now I'm drilling in a little bit. This is the chargeability. So this is your IP survey over Target 2, and you can see clearly the resistivity on the left, chargeability on the right. They both perfectly line up. We're getting exactly the right area there. You can see where we're going to be drilling, and those are the 6 holes that we're starting with. And we've actually added a 7th hole to this plan now as well. So these are all sitting just on the edge of the basement dome. And those diamond drill holes are going to give us a good, clear picture of what the mineralization looks like and where we orient the next round of holes to keep building this out. But very important to understand, these will be diamond holes. They're not going to be RC. We want to know what the structure looks like going forward. We want to understand this thing and be able to build it out. RC wouldn't give us that kind of detail. So we're going in here with diamond holes, and we're going to do this properly. And this gives you a better idea of where this is situated in terms of the actual basement dome itself. Again, right in the lower Rhone, exactly where 75 to 80% of the copper in the belt exists. And you can see the full extent of that target extending down to the southeast. It's a very, very big partial ionic leach target. The geochem target is basically identical. And of course, the VTEM target is there too. We are also running IP over this to complete the entire area of the target. As it currently sits now, the IP only covers that northwest portion. We're going to continue down to the southwest and then down all the way to the southeast and cover the entire thing. So that IP is going to take place very shortly as well. And then Me2, this is phase 1 of the exploration plan. This is our partial ionic leach program. We are covering the entire western flank of the Solwezi Dome, something we've never been. And there's a reason for that. When you look at what we're trying to correlate here, this is an area where traditional geochem, doesn't really work that well. It worked very, very well in the basement dome itself, where Dumbwa is located. At Kaziba, we saw that partial ionic leach worked much better. So there may be additional sulfide targets or oxide targets that extend all the way up the western side of the dome. So we're not only covering the 2 sulfide targets where we know we have mineralization, we're covering the entire Western Dome to see if there are additional targets that we may have missed going forward. So that's really, really critical. Now, going forward on the First Quantum Cooperative Exploration Plan, we've got an aggressive attack plan. Just to catch up anyone that has not seen this yet, these are the drill results we brought out in the fall of last year. Kaziba, just incredible. We have one small oxide blanket that we did our drilling on. It's turning out to be much larger and much higher grade than we expected. Results from that were incredible. 21 meters of 10.69, 26 meters of 5.6, and throwing back all the way to the beginning of my presentation today, 0.56 is the average grade in the camp for the big sulfide deposits. These are oxides. These are at surface. These are loose mineralization that can be scooped up with an excavator and taken straight to First Quantum's oxide plant. And of course, very, very high grade. So these are extraordinary. We did not expect the results to be quite as impressive as they were, but this is what we ended up with, which is just phenomenal. I'm going to show you the area we were working, but just to cover this off for anybody that does not yet know the story. First Quantum has both an SXEW and sulfide circuit at their mine. They also have a mixed ore circuit, and they have a smelter on site. That smelter throws off 1.3 million tons of sulfuric acid a year, and that's a huge environmental liability. So extremely important that they find a way to neutralize that acid, and at the same time, they're gaining as much copper as they can from the different sources on their property. So what they do is they heap leach copper oxides with their free acid. That neutralizes all of the acid into itself and gets rid of the environmental liability. It also liberates the copper in the oxides, and they're able to sell that as a cathode copper byproduct from which they make somewhere between 250 and 400 million a year. They are very low, if not out of oxides today, and we're lining up for Midnight Sun to be the new source feed for their SXEW circuit with our high-grade oxides at Kaziba that we've been working on, and then some additional areas across our property, including Me2, where we think there are additional sources. So very, very impressive. Now, this is a good view of what we've been working on. I'm going to jump one slide ahead. This is the oxide copper blanket that we brought out results from in the fall. And as you can see here, this is the actual drill plan. These are 50-meter centers. This is a 50-meter grid. And then we drilled a 100-meter step out. And we did this to define the extents. So what you can see, of course, that pink part is the highest grade portion that gave us those great big, super high grade intercepts. They are from surface with virtually no overburden or no soil whatsoever, very, very little cover. And then the grade diminishes as you move out. We now understand how these got there and what they are. We know we have a northeast extension on this blanket, so we're going to drill an additional 18 holes to drill this out and see how much we can extend it. That is the northernmost pink blob on your screen. In that graphic, you see that little one that's up to the north. That within the boundaries of that little pink blob is where the oxide blanket I just showed you is. There's a northeast extension, and you can see a clear eastern extension as well. But then as we move down to the southeast, you can see 3 more targets that we've basically uncovered with partial ionic leach that look very, very similar, if not identical. Those are getting drilled now. So we do believe that those are additional oxide blankets, additional sources, and we have basically in our mind unraveled what we see here and why this is happening. If you look at sulfide target 2 and you look at that as a source, in order for those oxides to exist, they have to have come from a sulfide source. They're the oxidized top portion of that deposit. We believe that drainage channels from sulfide target 2 carried the oxide mineralization along through paleo channels, and then it was deposited in pockets as it went along. That's what each of these would represent. If we're right, if we drill these targets and we have the same kind of success as we saw at Kaziba initial oxide blanket, then not only can we triple or quadruple the amount of oxides we have a methodology by which we can find more of these. We can follow those paleo channels, we can do additional work, and we can get to that point, which is super exciting. Based on this, we see a tremendous amount of upside and a valuation that I don't think anybody quite understands yet. We feel that there could be an unbelievable amount of upside here. But what's really important is if we're right, if our target 2 turns out to be the sulfide source, we have a brand new deposit on our hands. And that, in conjunction with the oxides, makes Kaziba an incredibly valuable asset, particularly when you consider the 6-kilometer distance to Kansanshi. And if we're right, and we have a fairly large deposit here with a high-grade core, I mean, we're looking at this and thinking that if the oxides are giving us those kind of grades, they had to have come from a high-grade source. If we're successful, if we have anything near what we're thinking, Kaziba is going to be an absolute crown jewel, and it's going to be elevated, of course, in the status of our projects. This is going to become incredibly important, valuable, and it'll have a lot of value to our neighbors. So this is a really, really exciting target, and this work is underway as we speak. So the attack plan is really simple. I've already told you about the 7 holes over sulfide target 2. These are the fences of holes we're drilling over the other oxide blankets to start, and we're going to complete those very, very quickly. Drilling hasn't started yet. Drill pads are being built, or if not already built. Drill rig should be arriving very shortly. 2 different drill rigs. Diamond drilling for sulfide target 2. Oxide drilling will be RC with a max depth of about 30 meters. So we're ready to go. And then, of course, last but not least, Me Too, this is underway now. This is our partial ionic leach testing. We're taking 1,800 samples covering the entire western flank of the dome, and that will give us good confirmation of the main targets down here to the south and uncover any brand new targets that we may not have seen in the past because of that type of regolith that covers the dome itself. So super exciting. Here's where we're sitting today. We've got around $10 million in the bank. We've had some warrants taken down. We've cashed up. So not only are we cashed up, we have additional warrants that we expect to be exercised over the next 10 to 12 months. Well, sooner than that, July they expire. So over the next couple of months, that should bring in another 2.5 million or so. So by the end of this entire program, we should be sitting at about the same cash level as what we started with, or very close to it. That entire first round of the program, the ionic leach over Me Too, the drilling at Kaziba, the IP survey at Dumbwa, total cost is only 500,000 US. So it's very inexpensive, and that's why I say it's cost effective, precise, methodical, and measured. We're going into this to transform these targets, take them to the next level, and start to build in a re-rate that can help us get the right valuation for this going forward. And then, of course, the last phase is going to be this big diamond drilling program at Dumbwa, which will launch sometime in May or early June. As soon as we have those IP survey results, we can pick the drill hole locations and start attacking Dumbwa full force. So it puts us in a really remarkable position. So as I always like to say, quick takeaway, we've got the plan in place with First Quantum, obviously working towards a formal agreement. We have 10 million in the bank. We're totally cashed up. We're attacking, 3 different targets all simultaneously. But if you look at Midnight Sun over the last 12 months, we've taken a jump, 850 to 900% peak valuation in terms of our transformation, which gave us a TSX top 50 status. We've really transformed the entire thing. And now we're attacking all of those targets, and with 100% of the upside in Midnight Sun's hands. So let's throw it open to the Q&A period. I'll throw it back to Taylor. That covers off the whole presentation at this point, but let's dig in.
Perfect. Thanks, Adrian. Now we'll turn to the Q&A portion of the webinar. Just a reminder to everybody on the line that you can type your questions into the chat box. So we do have a number that have come in already. The first one I'll start with here. Can you please clarify this post on the company website? And I'm quoting here, it holds a 60% interest in 2 mineral prospecting licenses, which are listed, the Solwezi licenses, which are held by a subsidiary. Maybe you can just explain kind of the structure of how those are held. Yeah,
100%. That may be out of date. I'm going to have somebody check on that. But basically, this property was originally First Quantum's. And so First Quantum held this ground for many, many years. When they were developing Kansanshi, they had to shed property. The government basically said, look, you've got 20 licenses, you're working on 5, you're building a mine, let the other stuff go and let's get some exploration work happening. So they did. That was picked up by some individuals that predominantly build strip malls in Zambia. They're not mining individuals. they had this property. Eventually, they ended up optioning it to us. And under that option, we had to earn out 100% through work and shares. So we've gone through that. We own 100% of Dumba. We own 100% of Crunch. We own 100% of Me2. And we own 85% of Kaziba today, but with an option to earn 100% based on work commitment. So carrying out that work, we're earning our way to 100% ownership of Kaziba, but still at 85% today. So this looks to me to be pretty out of date. We're going to have to check into that, but we own the vast majority. And of course, with the changeover with Cobalt this year, we exited the earn-in agreement and put ourselves in a position to have 100% ownership of Dumbwa. So we actually have all of the upside now, and that is a super exciting and critical move for us to position that way.
Perfect. Okay. Next question here. Let's turn to drilling. So fairly long here. I'll just read it out. With 4,000 meters and 125 holes dedicated to Kaziba, and then 3,000 towards the oxide targets and 1,000 for the sulfides. How confident is Kevin Bonnell and the team about the success of drilling at defining additional copper oxide mineralization or new targets? How confident are you in the new Kaziba target 2 sulfide target and the potential for that to be the copper sulfide source of all the oxide mineralization?
Okay, let's go through them piece by piece. Obviously, I think our drill program speaks to our confidence. This is not, we're not messing around. We're coming in here swinging. This is aggressive. This is not a typical approach that you see for a junior to take. We're pushing all 3 targets ahead at the same time, launching aggressive programs. But again, going back to this kind of measured, methodical approach, we're combining that with being very careful with our cash. We're making sure that we're drilling things that we already have confidence in because we've gone through the process of making sure that those targets have all the makings of an actual deposit or an actual system. And so we've taken the guesswork out of it through this step of geochem, IP leading to drilling. So when you look at the oxides, how confident are we? If you look at Kaziba, let's start with the initial oxide blanket. And this is, of course, the 125 holes being referred to here. I think it's actually going to end up being closer to 5,000 meters. It's going to be a little bit higher meters in terms of what we're doing in total. But we're going to drill 18 holes there. Are we confident? Absolutely. We don't know how much a northeastern extent there is, though. What we know is that our work last year at Kaziba on that initial blanket, it blew us out of the water. I mean, we were so successful there. It turned out to be such an impressive oxide blanket, and it gave us a really clear understanding of what we're actually dealing with there. So this new model that you're sort of referring to as the paleo channels and this oxide or transported oxide blankets that we're seeing. So in terms of our confidence in the oxides, very, very confident that we'll at least get definition to that northeastern extension. We don't know if the grades will be identical. It is covered with a small amount of regolith, which is exactly why we're drilling it. But do we know it keeps going? We know it keeps going. Do we know the grades are impressive? We know they're impressive. Is it malachite and bornite? Absolutely. We've drilled it enough to know. We've got 48 holes into it or so. So we know what we're doing. Very confident there. Now, when you look at the partial ionic leach, we took the signature of the initial oxide blanket, and it very clearly repeats on those 3 targets that come down to the southeast. So in terms of confidence in defining those additional targets, we don't know how high grade they are. We can't see them. We haven't looked at them yet. We need to drill them to find out, but they have the exact same signature. Same signature, same location, everything adds up. We do believe that they are additional oxide blankets, but the drilling is going to confirm that cheaply, quickly. So we're going to get there, but are we confident? Very, very confident. Now, going to Kaziba Target 2. Kaziba Target 2 is interesting because prior to going in and running the partial ionic leach survey, we had 2 areas outlined that we figured were likely to be the source. Areas that almost had to be the source. Somewhere on the property, there's a source, or that oxide mineralization can't exist. If I can describe it to you, it's like loose rubble. It's like having like a gravel pit of high-grade malachite sitting on surface on your property in numerous areas, and you're scratching your head going, how did this stuff get there? It's rounded, so we know it's mobilized. Something pushed it there, something moved it there. So one can deduce there has to be a sulfide target in the area that is the sulfide source of that high-grade mineralization. So when we had that initial idea, the two areas that we isolated, one of which was Kaziba Target 2, we had a big mag anomaly. We had a geochem anomaly that was weak, but told us it was there. And when you take all of the characteristics you're looking for, is it in the lower Rhone? Yes. It's in the right geology. Do we have mag? Yes. Is it 4 kilometers by 2 kilometers? Yes. Do we have geochem? Yes. 4 kilometers by 2 kilometers. Do we have partial ionic leach? Yes. 4 kilometers by 2 kilometers. Have we run IP to confirm that there is a sulfide unit in the lower Rhone underneath that thing? Absolutely. So we know that we have every single characteristic of a big sulfide system. We just don't know if it A, carries copper at depth, and we don't know the thickness of it. Now we're going to find out, we're going to drill it. But copper targets in the belt do not get better than Kaziba Target 2. That is a sulfide target that people, are dreaming of having. It's that good. Every single characteristic is there. The only box we haven't checked is drilling. So we're doing that now. So I hope that answers your question, but we're pretty confident in these targets.
Excellent. Okay. So just circling back here on that, on the licenses, I guess that wasn't on the Midnight Sun website. It was on Stockhouse though. So just
okay, no worries. Yeah, no, not 100% sure where the number came from, but yeah, gives you at least a really clear view as to what the ownership of those licenses are. The only one is Kaziba that we don't own 100% of. It's 85%, but we do have the option to earn 100%, and we're doing the work to get there. So that's where we'll end up at the end of the day, and no issues at all.
Okay, perfect. In terms of just sticking on drilling here,
sure.
will rainy season hamper the drilling?
Yeah, that's a good question from David. Definitely an issue going forward on certain areas, but it all depends on where you are. So one of the things that we've been exploring this year, and using that in the non-geological sense, is how we can approach our program to keep it running longer, not to get stuck in the rainy season thing. And as it turns out, because Dumbwa is hosted in the basement dome and it's not hosted in the lower Rhone, it's a completely different type of ground cover. In the basement dome, it's typically sandy and very hard packed. So we think we can actually drill right through the rainy season at Dumbwa this year. So the goal is going to be to set up this program to continue with no stopping in the rainy season, and just to keep pushing through. That's not set in stone yet. We'll have to wait to see how everything breaks down with the actual drill targets and amount of drilling we need to do to start with. But that is the goal, is to keep going all the way through. In places like Kaziba, where it tends to get really mucky and it can get dangerous to drill, we may not drill through the rainy season, but at least part of the program is going to continue right all the way through.
Perfect. Okay. And one more question that I see here that we haven't got to yet, and I think you did touch on this in the presentation, just with regards to First Quantum and their need at Kansanshi for oxide material. How much tonnage do they need? How much cash flow does that oxide generate? And how does the sulfide target tie onto that plan?
For sure. So in terms of how much tonnage First Quantum needs, the first thing that you want to look at is, what do they run? What do they run at their SXEW circuit? They currently do 25,000 tons a day at 0.2% copper. So they have a need for a large amount of oxides. That oxide material is predominantly used to neutralize acid. So it's very important that they get enough material going into the SXEW circuit to take care of that, first and foremost, that environmental liability. Secondarily, the grade of copper is just going to affect the amount of actual cathode copper they create as a byproduct, which they can then sell. So in terms of how much they need 25,000 tons a day. We don't obviously have this advanced far enough to say what we're going to produce or what we can do, other than how much total tonnage do we want? How much tonnage do they need? We're confident, based on early discussions with them, which I think it was at something along the lines of, 150 million tons, we'll take it. Like, we need that material. They just opened up a 35 to 40 year sulfide lens. So that means they have 35 to 40 years of production ahead. That's their mine life today. and sulfides is predominantly what they're mining. That means that they're going to keep smelting material and keep producing sulfuric acid for 35 to 40 years. That means they need 25,000 tons a day for the next 35 to 40 years. So from that, you can deduce that they need an awful lot of oxides, probably more than there is across the property, but we don't know. We might have enough to go all the way with that. At the end of the day, we have what we think will be a very large amount of oxide material amongst the new targets and the first oxide blank that we're working on. We think that we can satisfy them for maybe 10 years, maybe 20 years. We don't know yet. We're going to find out as we drill this off and come up with tonnage. But we're confident that any amount of oxides we come up with will go into their plan long term, and that there will be a need for it. And hey, if we can take care of them for the next 35 to 40 years, we're happy to do that if we can actually achieve that. In terms of the sulfide target, I did touch on this slightly because I think it's really important to understand. If we are successful at Kaziba Target 2, if we have a sulfide deposit that is significant in size, scale, and grade, it's going to make this much more important. It's very close to Barrick's Lumwana mine. It's very close to Kansanshi. With the current operation that we have here with First Quantum working on our cooperative exploration plan, proving that we have a significant brand new sulfide deposit, certainly in our minds would be valuable as part of a bigger picture. That has yet to be put into any kind of a formal plan, but I think it's critical to think of it in terms of this doesn't have the typical value as though it were an outlier 50 or 60 kilometers away from everything else. This is 6 kilometers away from Kansanshi. This is 20 kilometers away from Lumwana. And certainly depending on size and scale, it may justify a standalone mine, as all of the targets might on our property as we go forward. So it shows a huge amount of value that is not realized whatsoever in Midnight Sun's share price.
Perfect. I think that's a pretty comprehensive answer there. So I think we've gotten through all the questions that have come in, and we are coming up on the hour here. So I think we'll wrap up there for today. So I would like to thank Adrian from Midnight Sun for taking the time to host a webinar today with Red Cloud Securities, and thank you to everybody on the line for tuning in with us.
Excellent. Really appreciate it, everyone. Thank you.